Hi everybody, today we're going to learn how to use the Volcanoes project, which Manifold recently published for use with Manifold Viewer and Manifold Release 9. To run this project you need the very latest version of Viewer, the so-called Viewer Edge, and a different video shows how to download Viewer Edge, how to install it, and how to launch it. Here we've launched Viewer and we've opened up the project. To open up the project we clicked File, Open, and then here we chose Manifold World Volcanoes.mxb and we click the Open button. We already have the project open, so we're not going to repeat that. And when the project loads, what we see is these components here, and to see something visual we double click on the thing called Map. And what that shows is what the project is, and the project consists of numerous layers, many of which are turned off. They're the ones that are disabled. We can turn them on by double clicking them. For example, there's a Bing Maps satellite layer. Here we have the Google Maps satellite layer. And it shows about 430 volcanoes in the world, together with labels and dots where each volcano is located. I'm going to turn off the dots by double-clicking the dots in that drawing layer so that we can work with just the labels, and that'll reduce the clutter in terms of visual display on the system. Now, the genius of this project is that it has a folder here called Manifold Volcanoes Locations. If we open up that folder, we see that it has a location, a name for each volcano that's here in our data. And the way we work with this, with location, is that you right-click on a location, choose View an Active Window, and it immediately pans and zooms the display to that location. So, for example, we can take a look at the Hualalai, I'm sure I've mispronounced that crater, which is in a shield volcano in the United States. As you can see, you can jump instantly to anywhere in the world. Now, all that is good, but what we're going to learn now is why it's great to use Manifold Viewer instead of just an ordinary browser. Let's say, for example, that you're interested in the volcano called Ibu, which is a stratovolcano in Indonesia. You've looked it up on the web, and you've got a geohack coordinates that you picked up from Wikipedia, and you click on it to visualize it in Google Earth. And what does Google Earth show you? Well, Google Earth is going to show you something like this. Because for the Ibu volcano, Google Earth, as brilliant as it is, doesn't cover the entire world, and there's plenty of locations, in particular volcanoes in tropical areas, which are often covered with clouds. So there's not much to see here with the Ibu volcano. However, because you have Manifold Viewer, what you can do is you can double-click the Bing satellite layer, and you can see Bing actually has a very clear view in that spot. Or if you didn't want to use Bing, you could click the Google Maps terrain layer and take a look at it in the terrain elevations. What the Google Terrain web server does is for every place in the world where there is terrain elevation data, typically acquired by radar from satellites or from the space shuttle or something like that, it draws a hill-shaded relief presentation with contours that shows what the terrain elevation is. This is a great way to look at volcanoes in places like Antarctica or Alaska or Siberia, or places like that where they're often snow-covered and there's very little relief, but you can see the terrain elevation. And if they're covered with clouds, well, use Bing. And if Bing's covered with cloud, well, then you can switch to using Google. Generally, Bing and Google have the very best worldwide imagery coverage. And in some cases, it's really astonishing. So, for example, you can zoom in here as I'm doing. I'm using the wheel mouse to scroll in and out. With the Bing satellite imagery, you can see it's detailed down to incredibly high levels. And Google is still in cloud at this point. Let's take a look at a few other different locations, and let's take a look at the Masaya crater. And the Masaya caldera is, I believe, in Nicaragua. Where is it here? Okay, here it is, Masaya. And that is a caldera, which is in Nicaragua. So I'm going to right-click on that and choose View an Active Window. All these locations are rigged, by the way, to show 1 to 50,000 degree scale as their starting scale. In Bing, the Masaya caldera looks pretty good. You can see that there's these 3 craters there. In Google, you can see that they also look pretty good. The Google's pretty good resolution with this crater here, but there's all the steam coming out of the vent, the central vent. So for something like this, we definitely want to use maybe Bing or perhaps the terrain elevation, which shows us the terrain elevation here, and that shows us some features. For example, the ridged depression here, which is kind of hard to pick up from the photographs here. The photographs don't really show the rise of land that's there. Google shows it slightly better than Bing, But all the same, you get a better feel for what the terrain elevation actually is like by using the terrain. This is something that you can't do in an ordinary browser like Google, because you can't go back and forth between different sources, and you certainly can't go back and forth between say, Google and Microsoft Bing, because the two of them are competitors. But you can do that here in Manifold Viewer. You can also add stuff to it, for example, street layers. For example, here's a Google Street Maps layer. Now, this is great. It's a typical Google Street Maps layer, but the problem is in between all these streets, it's filled in with color. So that doesn't help us see what's in the background. What we really need is the so-called Google Street Map transparent layer, which is this one right here. And that's available as a layer in the default map in the project. And you double-click that on, and what it does is the transparent layer, it shows Google Streets and it shows labels, and it doesn't fill in any pixels in between them. So you can zoom in and out. And that layer will zoom in and out, it'll bring in tiles as need be, and it'll work with the Bing layer, it'll work with the Google Maps satellite layer that we have here, and it'll even work with the Google Terrain layer, which is not so cool because it's harder to see what's going on there. Let's use the Bing Maps satellite layer, and from here we can see that this is called the crater San Pedro, this is the Volcan Masaya, this is Volcan Santiago, this is Volcan Masaya o Santiago, and this is the crater Nadiri. My Spanish is very weak, so I'm sure I'm mispronouncing all that. Apologies to all of our Spanish users. This shows you how you can do all kinds of wonderful, cool stuff in Viewer that is hard to do or is impossible to do in an ordinary browser. And just to show you, by the way, that I don't play favorites, let's take a look at a display where Google has a very good display, but Bing Maps doesn't have anything at all. And that's this the Yasur stratovolcano, which is in Vanuatu. And I'm going to view that in the active window. And the Bing satellite layer doesn't do anything at all. If I turn off Google, and let's turn off that layer right there, you can see the Bing satellite layer doesn't do anything. That's because Bing has no data at that location. But Google has lots of data. In fact, it has a full terrain elevation, and it has some very good photo imagery. In fact, you can zoom in here. You can zoom all the way into this baby, into the crater, and you can actually see live lava. What's really nice is that when you look down the throats of some of these volcanoes from satellite view, turn off those labels so you can get a better look at this, you can actually see lava in the deep throat of the volcano going straight down. So I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration. Keep in mind that if you're working with Manifold Viewer, Viewer is read-only. You can browse projects that somebody else has made for you, but you cannot make your own projects and save them. People use Manifold Release 9 to create projects like this, to create lists of locations that users can download and use for free with Viewer, kind of like an automatic tour guide. But to do all that stuff, you'll need Manifold Release 9, which is not a free program. There's a small fee for that, but it's a reasonable fee. So I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration. I hope you've enjoyed it. Go out and download Viewer. It's free, no strings attached, no nagware, no attempts to upsell, no advertising, none of that stuff. Just plain old-fashioned free software. I hope you've enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. Goodbye from Manifold Land. Well, that was fun. If you want to see more, visit us at www.manifold.net. As always, Manifold delivers the world's most advanced, highest quality spatial products for GIS and DBMS at a low price that you can afford. Once again, that's manifold.net. See you soon.